Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, celebrity interviews, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
Welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. But for our radio audience here in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM and WYADonline.com, we're glad that you all could be with us. Also, tuning in to our friends at iHeartRadio and Amazon Music Podcasts. We're glad you all could join us as well. Well, there's a lot of news out there today when it comes to inflation and what's happening with the Federal Reserve. And you may be wondering how you can be able to best understand what's happening and the impact for you. Well, we have the perfect guest that's joining us today. He's an economist, but also the author of a brand new book called Understandable Economics. We're excited to welcome Howard Yaruss to our program today. The book's subtitle is Because Understanding Our Economy is Easier Than You Think and More Important Than You Know. The book officially comes out this week. We're excited to talk to Howard, not only about the work he's been able to do, but also how this is something that all of us can better understand and appreciate. Howard, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Howard, I have to say, this book was a lot of fun because it was exactly what you said in the title. It was understandable. And I think for so many people, when they're hearing about, interest rates and all of these things, they can sound confusing. So what has it been like for you, not only as an economist, but also now as the author of this book, to kind of break it down for us so we can better understand it?
Oh, it's a passion for me to break it down because I think there's so much misleading information out there. And when people don't understand something, they could easily be misled and sold policies that don't make sense. So my hope, my goal with this book is to get people to better understand what's going on in our economy, and hopefully they'll support better policies and better politicians. Maybe they'll decide to run for office themselves, and we'd see a better economy as a result. That was my motivation for the book.
Yeah, I think the thing that really got me, especially because, as I mentioned in my introduction, Howard, that we hear so much right now about inflation. That's the big scary thing that people are talking about. But then there's also what Wall Street seems to be afraid of, and that's what the Federal Reserve is going to do when it comes to interest rates. I love the fact that you bring out something I don't think we think a lot about. And a lot of focus this year has been, understandably, on decisions by the Supreme Court. But you say in the book we should know just as much about the Fed as we do about the Supreme Court. Talk to our audience about that.
Oh, absolutely. The Dobbs case that undid Roe v. Wade got a lot of press, to say the least. But every single day, each of us is vastly affected by the economy. When the economy is doing well, we're doing well. We may have more job options. People we know who are unemployed may have an easier time getting jobs. And when the economy is not doing well, obviously, there's a lot of downside to that to each of us. So the Fed has the same impact on the economy that the Supreme Court has on our rights and privileges as citizens. So it's something that people need to be more aware of, because if they're not, things may happen that they may not be particularly happy about.
Yeah. I think that is so true, and I think that's why, as a lot of people, when they think about, who is elected to the Fed and exactly what their ideals are, realizing that impact for sure. I mentioned also, Howard, the word recession. That is the thing that people are talking about today. Are we headed that way? You talk about in chapter 10 of the book, Boom and Bust. You kind of break down what a recession is. Do you think that also, as we're talking about understandable economics, do you think that also is the thing that we hear these terms, but we don't really understand what it means?
Agreed. People think that there's something magic about a recession or a downturn in the economy, that there's something they can touch, something that comes out of a formula that you can quantify. What a recession is, the point I make in the book, it's psychological phenomenon. For instance, you can test the skill of workers right before recession begins and right after. You wouldn't see a difference. You could test the capacity of a factory right before recession begins and right after. You wouldn't see a difference. It's a psychological phenomenon where there's a gloomy mood takes over. People cut spending. What happens when people cut spending? Businesses cut back, lay off people. People lose jobs. Their incomes drop. They spend less, and you go into this downward cycle. The point I always make is There's a psychological term for an individual human being when they are overcome by a gloomy mood and can't be productive. It's called a depression. And there's a reason why the economic term is the same for that kind of phenomenon on a mass scale.
I think that is it, and I think that is the big thing here, and that's why a book like this, Howard, is so important. So I want to talk to you about the time frame. As I mentioned, the book officially comes out this week. We're going to remind our audience how they can also stay connected with you. How much time did it take you to kind of compile this and to write the book?
COVID. It was my COVID project. I have taught this subject for years, and I try to hone the ability to discuss it in an accessible and entertaining way. 18-year-olds don't have the greatest attention span, certainly not these days. And so I try to make it as accessible and as engaging as possible for them. And this book is a result of years of effort making this topic interesting, accessible, and comprehensible.
There is an interesting quote that
the book just flowed out of me during COVID when I had all the time on my hands. I basically reduced all that effort over the years to this book, and here it is.
Yeah, I was just going to say one of the interesting quotes you have is from Elizabeth Warren, and the reason why I think the quote stood out to me, Howard, is because I think a lot of times we hear this whole thing about being self-made, and and people think that they do all these things on their own, and the quote basically was talking about the fact you may build something, but it really is an us thing. You talk about in the book this is not a left and right thing. This really should be an us thing. Is that kind of also what you hope Understandable Economics does for people, to remind them that it really is about us working together to achieve what we want?
There's a famous line, there were no millionaires in the Stone Age. The point is that in order for your money to have any meaning, it relies on the efforts of everyone else out there. My efforts, your efforts. The money doesn't mean anything out of the context of the society in which we live. Anyone with money depends upon the efforts of everyone else to give that money value. So yes, it's a group effort. The economy, it's not one person. It's all of us together producing, and we allow money to dictate how it's allocated. But the money, the money is just green paper or electronic entries into your bank account, but it only has meaning because of all of our efforts, everyone's efforts.
Yeah. And that's why a book like this is so important. Again, everyone, Howard Yaruss has been our guest. His new book out this week is called Understandable Economics, because understanding our economy is easier than you think and more important than you know. The book officially comes out September 15th, but you guys can go ahead and pre-order it now for those joining us live here on the radio side, but also, of course, be able to get it from your local bookstore as well when it's released. And, Howard, how can they stay connected with you?
You could easily say either you and your listeners, feel free to email me at howardyaruss@gmail.com, HOWARDYARUSS@gmail.com.
All right, Howard, congratulations again, and thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
More than welcome. You as well. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live. Now let's go make today amazing. Take care.